Hi everyone, welcome to the Banter Room. This is a place where we have no holds barred conversations about any and everything. I am your host today. My name is Sharon Hepzibah, and I am joined by two incredible guests here with me. And I'm going to introduce them one at a time. Over to my left, I have here Attoh, and Early is a product designer, he's a photographer and a music producer, and he currently helps design better experiences for people around relationships with money. Money matters. We just might get to that soon on the Banter Room. But welcome to the show, Early.
Thank you, Sharon.
Glad to have you here. And right in front of me is another incredible person, Adaora. Lumina, some of you might know her, but if you don't know who she is, Adaora is the founder of Lumination Global Network and the co-founder at Dreamterpreters Inc. And it is a brand consultancy company that has worked with brands such as Google, Guinness, Johnny Walker, Microsoft, Pepsi, and others, right? Adaora is also the founder of Socially Africa, an organization that encourages people to be good, do good, and to inspire good. So welcome to the show, Adaora.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. Yes, it's a pleasure to have you here. Yeah. And today we will be talking about something that you've probably used or you've heard or you've seen on Twitter, especially on Black Twitter. You're cancelled, that phrase. Maybe you've been cancelled or you've cancelled someone else. We want to talk about everything that has to do with cancel culture as we unpack popular culture on today's episode. So we're going to jump right in without wasting any time. And I'm going to go over to my guests, starting with Early. So what do you understand by cancel culture?
To me, cancel culture is, I think it started in 2018 when the Me Too movement started. So it was the public's, it was like a public empowerment way to say, you're in a place of power, you're in a position to do something, and you've kind of abused that position and abused that, and then we're holding you accountable, one, by deplatforming you, or by taking away your voice or your ability to continue that influence, or your influence rather. So that was my first introduction to cancel culture, and I think it's kind of evolved since then. But that's where the first time I heard about cancel culture. Yeah.
Okay. And Adaora?
I think for me, cancel culture is basically disagreeing with, people's values, ideology, beliefs that they have, that might be harmful to society, right? But I also think that cancel culture is thinking that your beliefs are more superior than others.
Let's dive right in.
Sure.
No problem.
Sure.
It's interesting that you say you heard of it in 2018. I think maybe at the back of my mind, I heard, that term, you're cancelled. But I think the only time I really paid attention to that phrase was last year during the NSAS protests, where a lot of people were getting cancelled on Twitter. I mean, I don't need to name names. If you were in Nigeria, you probably cancelled one or two people, in public sphere for saying certain things. It was like, oh, so you're not on our side, you're cancelled.
Or for not saying
anything.
Yeah.
And, and it's like, now that you're cancelled, now you want to speak, you're still cancelled. That sort of thing. I think that's when I really paid attention to it. But I was doing some research and I actually found out the first time the phrase you're cancelled was actually used in a movie in 1991.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was used in a movie, and I think people, didn't really pay attention to it. And then someone else used it in an interview. Right? Kanye West used it in a song, in I think 2010. And then again in 2014, it came up and people just started using it. Oh, this person likes orange, you're cancelled. This person likes this, you're cancelled. Yeah. It became like a joke, but some people actually kind of took it seriously.
Yeah.
But like we said, cancel culture is really, it is saying, okay, like Early said, it's supposed to be, okay, you have this platform, you have this power, you've abused it, and now we're taking away your voice by ignoring you. And it's essentially supposed to sort of like, I've read things like, end your career or take away the platform that you have, different interesting things like that. But I want to hear from you guys. Do you think the way cancel culture has evolved, right? Is it effective, or has it turned into sort of like a
weapon,
a mob mentality and a weapon to just basically, and it's actually not calling accountability, especially now. Let's look, before we even get into the personal aspect of it, but in the public sphere where we're calling out, public figures who are not holding the platform that they have properly. Is it effective? I'm going to start with you, Adaora.
So first of all, I think that the terminology in itself is problematic, right? Like I would rather call it accountability culture because semantics, right? Like if you're calling it cancel culture, there's already a negative connotation that's attached to it, right? And so what you do is you're reinforcing bad behavior by calling it cancel culture. Period. So can we align on this table that we're going to start calling it accountability culture? Moving on from here. But I think that when it comes to cancel culture, we've definitely drifted away from what it was originally intended, to be. And I think that, people definitely weaponize it. People use it as a way to also sort of focus on letting out their insecurities, the way they feel about people, about other individuals. I find that a lot of times we're not necessarily focused on canceling the behavior. We're focused on canceling the person. So what happens when you're canceling the person versus the behavior is the behavior never really gets addressed. Like you're not addressing the actual problem, right? So we're saying this guy did something or that lady did something. And at the beginning, we're all talking about the thing that they did. And then give it like 48 hours, we're now talking about the person, because what we do is we go and we dig up the person's past and their lives to kind of create or I'd say to kind of justify why it is that we're saying what we're saying about them. And at that point, what happens is you take away from the problem. So you're not spotlighting the problem anymore, you're spotlighting the person. And I think that that's a very flawed way to approach it, because you have a moment to educate people. You have a moment to turn this situation around. But now we're talking about the individual. Right? So we kind of shifted there. So so I definitely think it has been taken out of context. It has become a weapon. It has also become a tool for lazy trolls. Have you seen like those memes where they put like a meme of what a troll looks like in their little bedroom candle and all of that stuff. So I think we've given opportunity for it to be misused. It has its benefits, but I guess we'll talk about that later.
Really.
I totally agree with what Adaora said. It's moved from being that, like I said, the tool for accountability, which was in the heat of the Me Too movement, in the heat of the Black Lives Matter movement, which is when I got introduced to it properly, or when I became came to my focus. It was one way to say, hey, people have been speaking about these things or these atrocities or these misbehaviors for a while, in small silos. But right now, it's now come to like a more public view, and we're saying, hey, we don't agree with this behavior. We think this should stop. And if you're not going to apologize and start seeking, going in the direction to fix that, then we're going to take away your platform and take away the influence you have, because it's dangerous, right? It's now moved from that to, like Adaora said, it's anybody just wants to use it. If I don't like you, I don't like one thing you said, or I don't like your faith, or I don't like anything about you, I can then choose to pick what I don't like and cancel you based on that. And the crazy thing is, there's always going to be a group of people who will see reason with why you're canceling, no matter what, like how flimsy the reason is. There will always be a bunch of people who say, hey, we think, I don't like your shirt today, I don't like red shirts, you're this, you're that, and then we're canceling you because you wore a red shirt. Or you didn't speak on something, and we think you should have spoken on that.
Because of the platform that you have.
And it's like, at what point do you hold people accountable, and where does that cross to policing their lives and their actions and what they do and what they do or what they don't say? So it's
there's no winning.
Exactly. There's really no winning. There's no winning with that. Really.
There really is no.
If you speak, you're in trouble. If you don't speak, you're in trouble.
That's interesting, because I was reading, at first it was, I guess, effective, But I think it has also turned into sort of like a fear of what society, two things. There is people not wanting to be cancelled because it might affect, so they don't do it not because they necessarily agree that the behavior is bad. But then there's the angle of people actually taking this whole cancel culture and, turning it for their own benefit. So what do I mean? Someone gets cancelled and now they go around doing interviews and their public relations officer has probably prepped them on how to subtly make it about them being the victim rather than addressing the actual behavior. So it's like, I've been, insulted on Twitter, I've been, it's like I've been attacked and all of that. And so it's not effective. I mean, is it as effective anymore when, we're spinning the entire thing into something that is not? Are people, let's even come down to the Nigerian setting, for example. We all know that African leaders don't resign. That's one. Does cancel culture work in a setting like Africa or Nigeria, for example, where we are like, this public figure is not doing what they need to do. This person in government or this person here is not doing what they need to do. You're cancelled, but all you're saying is you're cancelled and it has no meaning, for this person. So, let's take the NSAS protest, for example. Has it done anything to change, these people's perceptions, or are they just looking at us like, that's your problem?
Well, I think it still comes back down to what I was, alluding to before. Point in case, the example that you just gave of someone going for an interview and they're fully prepped, right, on what to say. What happens in those situations is that even the interviewer, right, is not asking the right questions. Because again, it's so focused on the person's personality, their history. You're primarily focused on bringing the individual down versus dealing with the systematic issue.
Yes.
Right? So these conversations happen. And I've been a victim of cancel culture. Right? So yeah, I have. And it's very interesting because in I don't know if I can give the example, but in this particular situation, I felt that the people who were trying to have the conversation, so in fact, I'll just say it.
Okay, please go ahead.
Yeah, it's my Christian brothers and sisters. Well, I done a post, right? Basically, insinuating that, and it was very clear. I said that basically I believe, and I used the word I didn't say the Bible says. I said, I believe that, non-Christians will make it to heaven. That's my personal belief, right? And so I had talked about this, right? I had openly discussed this. And, of course, a lot of people from different religions were like, yeah, I align with this. Some Christians said, we don't know. We're not the judge, right? So we really don't know, which is accurate. We don't know.
Yeah.
But then I had a couple Christian brothers and sisters that decided that they were going to attack the person. So they weren't necessarily saying, oh, Adaora, like, well, I don't believe in this. Like when you're addressing it, you say, I don't believe in what it is that you're saying. This is what I believe.
Yes.
But in this particular situation, it was like, oh no, I can't believe you said that. You know what I mean? Like you are a Christian influencer. You can't say those kind of things. Yeah. And so it was that articulation that happened. And then they kind of took it out of context and it became more focused on, am I really Christian? Right. So it now became, so one of the posts that I saw that was done was a whole conversation about how, like these days the devil uses evil people, evil people that consider themselves Christian influencers. The devil will use them for anything. So you have to be discerning, and these conversations were going out. Right. So in those kind of situations, my question is, I say to myself, one, some of these people are people who know me personally, right? Know me very personally. So I'm saying to myself, you didn't DM me.
Yeah, it was like
you could have been a private conversation and would have aligned and you'd have understood context. Or, and so I'm asking, what is the motive? Same thing applies with NSAS and with everything. It now becomes, what is your motive? So is your motive to address this conversation, and we can have it's a brilliant opportunity to have a great discourse.
Sure.
Because now there's all of us Christians on this conversation, and we can all come up with different angles, right? And have a conversation and communicate. And in that conversation, you'll see that we actually align on very similar ideology, right?
Yeah.
But if you look at it as an opportunity to go in for the kill, to either make your voice the loudest or to just say, I just want to prove that this person has always been,
in this
or inauthentic, then you lose it. So with all the whether it's NSAS, whether it's any of the what we feel about the government and all that, I think that we give them an easy escape because we focus on the individual. We don't say this is the problem. And then what they do is they play smart. And so they shift the goalposts and they move us into whatever. So now we're no longer fighting about this guy because there's another guy that's shown up on the blogs tomorrow. We've shifted. Focus is on this other guy. And we keep going for the guys versus the problem.
Yeah. This conversation is getting very interesting, but we're going to take a short break right now and we'll be right back. Welcome back to the show, everyone. Just a quick recap. We're talking about cancel culture, and we have addressed the fact that cancel culture has sort of evolved from what it was, where it was to actually address behaviors and keep people, especially in public spaces, accountable for their actions, to where we are now canceling the individual themselves and not addressing the issues that come up with, what leads to cancel culture. But right now, I want us to delve into how it has sort of permeated into personal space. Because now people are no longer, let me not say we, people are no longer just canceling public figures. But now people in personal lives. And Adaora gave an example of how people actually cancelled you because of something that you put up. And so let's address that. Is it still cancel culture, or can it be termed something else when it comes into the personal space? Any one of you can go ahead.
Yeah, so there was an instance where a mutual friend, I think it was early last year, where a mutual friend, someone who I'd met in 2019 and had mutual friends and was getting to know, and then came up on Twitter that he was a serial molester and was grooming young women and things like that. And it's like, so personally, it's like, I'm going to distance myself from this person, right? But more importantly I began to think, right, it could be any other person in my life. It could be someone who is a lot closer.
Yeah.
And then it's one thing when you can say for someone who you don't have a direct personal relationship, like, I'm not going to listen to your music or do anything. You can make that separation, right?
Yeah.
But when it's someone who has a lot more influence over your life, like, your close friend, you're someone you see in church, right? You then begin to ask yourself these questions like, besides doing that, how else can you react to this? How else can you think about this, like doing what you're doing, like canceling the person or like, and then also from a Christian point of view, the Bible teaches forgiveness, right? In forgiving, how do you make sure that you're not just ostracizing this person, but you're also making it possible for there to be redemption? Yes. So I think it's a very important thing that I began to think about, like, okay, yes, I'm no longer talking to this person. They need time to go and think about what they've done. Probably need therapy, whatever it needs to be that happened. But then after that period, how do we think of reabsorbing them into those relationships?
Yeah.
Like, where do you start from? I think it's an aspect of that I don't see a lot of people talking about. Right. It's more like, okay, let's throw you away, go and sort yourself out. But then what happens when you're done? Is there any process for reabsorbing those people? I'd just like you to talk about that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm listening to you. I'm like, perfect response. I mean, that's it, really. I think that, we go back to he who is without sin cast the first stone. Yeah. I feel like if we're all walking around with our hearts cut open and we could all see what we really and our minds cut open and we could all see what we really think about each other, we'll all be cancelled. Definitely. True. Because it's about context, right?
Yeah.
Cancelling is about context. And so if I think about, like he said earlier, if I don't like red. You're wearing red. You know, again, my thoughts is people that wear red are cultists.
Yes.
So automatically, you know, I'm distancing from you. And we see this happen even just with, you know, conversations around race or conversations around culture.
Yeah.
There are times where you'll hear a story that, you know, this person married their third cousin or second cousin and you have an issue with it and it's culture for them. Like they grew up in in a country and a culture that allows you to marry into your family. Well, not your direct sibling, that would be incest. But you know what I mean? Like within that. So and sometimes when I even think about a lot of our cultural behaviors as Nigerians, when you go outside of Nigeria, cancelled every day because there's certain things that we do or that we say, like you walk into somewhere, I mean, and you're like, oh, wow, you look like you've put on weight. You get what I mean? You can't do that in America.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, or when it comes to mixed race people, the way we address mixed race people,
you know, you can't
so
go and see someone and then the person will just tweet and say, can you imagine?
Yeah.
You know, they saw this. So it's contextual. So I think when we are dealing with people who are close to us, open communication is important. You know, I love what Ellie said about if we look at it as you know, an opportunity to redeem and help this person through what it is that, you know, they've been through, then you kind of you address it differently, right? So you communicate to find solution. Yeah,
because we don't. I think the general conception of that is there's no forward thinking, there's no future thinking. It's like, yes, we're doing this now, but then what happens in the future? Is there ever any plan to happen? It's just right now, let's do this now and end it there. And it's like, something very interesting is with Chris Brown and the Rihanna thing. Till today, I see that Chris Brown is still cancelled for a lot of times. And then it's interesting because then when does it end? Right. Is it when he dies? Is it like what do you have to do to get that redemption?
Yeah. And the problem with that is if he comes out in public to even maybe again address the situation and apologize, it's like, but maybe we'll watch you from afar and see.
Yeah, he's spent 4 or 5 years apologizing. And I'm not defending him. I'm just saying, if you take that thing and then strip out all the things and just look at it for what it is, because it could be any other person. Yeah. At what point do you move from, also how long is long enough? Right? You did something very bad now. Like, is it 5 years? Is it 6 years? Is it your entire career for the rest of your life?
People will say to you that that question of how long is long enough is not valid because of the circumstance. So when you now start talking about racial issues or issues of violence and all of that, it's like, well, we don't know if he's still the same person. We're not there during his rehabilitation and all of that. What is the guarantee that he won't repeat it? You know, he won't do it to someone else, you know. So those are the kind of conversations, but I do understand that, but there has to be forward thinking of how do we help. And I think that's it's going to lead to my next question, because we've said with, you know, people who are close to us, we sort of engage in that process of helping them to heal, to recover, to change and all of that. But how do we now, because we've said now people themselves are just getting cancelled, but the behavior is not changing. So how do we now look at it from a public perspective when we're dealing with people in public? How do we now go from that place of this thing you're doing is not right and we don't want anything to do with you, or to calling out the behavior itself so that we actually see a change in the issue, especially when they're far from us? Because, I mean, it's one thing to not give them or to take away that platform. And it's another thing to make sure that there is some level of change, because they also deserve redemption. Not just the people in our lives.
Absolutely. I think that it boils down to information and data. that's the only way you can really solve problems, right? And I don't think we do that enough, is basically, okay, you're telling me that this person has done this, and you say you automatically say, they're like this, right? Because he lied today. He's a liar. He's a liar.
For the rest of
right? So we're like, Ellie's a liar. No matter what he ever says in his life, he's a liar, right? Does he lie habitually, right? How many times has he lied? can we get the data? Because the data helps us make more informed decisions.
True.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that even when we're looking at people who have done things or people who have said things, you cannot look at it. You have to look at it in context of who they are, what they're about.
Yes.
Which is why I gave the example that happened to me. Because if you know me, you can't look at it out of the context of what you know about me.
Yes.
Do you understand what I mean? So if you decide to take the incident and isolate it, then it's a problem because it means that you're saying, you don't know me, you've never known me, you know? So I think that sometimes you can ask yourself, like, is this person maybe not communicating accurately what it is that they're thinking, right? Is it so people do things, and again, these days, we're very quick to play the race card, and I understand why. We have every right to, like, I mean, if you go historically, but at the same time, we also need to be able to produce and provide that data, right? That it helps all of us to see the information and say, okay. Like I saw yesterday, speaking about politics, I saw yesterday there was all this information going around about, Biafra and all that. And you saw people that had a certain opinion, you saw them shifting because of new information that has been introduced, into the equation. So you're now like, okay, I can make I'm speaking from a more informed
position.
Point of view. So it's really, my response to that would be data information. That's how we can hold people properly accountable, is let's have enough to make a decision on.
Okay, so one of the things I want us to address is the effect that some of these actions have on victims. So what do I mean? In counseling, the individuals per se, a lot of focus is placed on the people who've done whatever it is or said whatever it is they've said. And we sometimes forget the people who are, especially when it has like direct impact on individual lives. How do we ensure that this does not happen, that we don't ignore the people who are affected? So we've said we need to pay attention to the issue itself and not the person, but how do we make sure that we're also attending to the people who are affected by
that behavior?
Yes, by the behavior. Adaora, do you want to start?
Early is early, so you got this.
That's your first early joke. Okay.
That's very good.
I think it's also a thing of empathizing. Empathy is very important here. If you have empathy, then you know that in different scenarios, different people want different things. Like different closure means different things to different people. So if we as a society are big on empathy, then you can know that in a sexual abuse case, for instance, what closure means for that person is an apology is fine, but then there's a whole lot more that goes into them finally getting some closure in that situation, right? And it could take a whole lot longer than, for instance, in a corruption case or in a violence case, or maybe you're using like racial slurs against one ethnic group or another. So it's just being empathetic and also like being wise in how we do that, right? Wisdom is very important as well. So I think that's how I would address that, really.
I completely align. I think empathy, and I definitely think that, freedom, like just equal opportunity, because at the end of the day, I feel like you don't have to understand my pain. You don't have to understand my position. You don't have to understand it. But allow me to express it. And I think for a lot of these people who go through this and, are on the victim side, is the frustration comes from
no one wants to understand you or listen to you.
Like you're not even letting me express it.
Yes.
So I don't even need you to understand me, but let me express it, And I think that we have this way as human beings where we operate so much from a place of fear versus from a place of love. And so when we don't understand something, our immediate response is to shut it down. Right? Because we don't know the gravity of what it can do. If this information we don't understand, we don't want you to say it. So we'll silence you, And so I think, empathy, is not even just about feeling for that person. It's a right. It's an actual right, is I have a right to express my
Empathy is your right, Adaora 2021.
right. I have a right to express my belief and my ideologies and, whatever. And you have a right to counter it by expressing yours. I also have a right to not accept.
True.
And you have a right to not accept.
Yeah.
That's it.
Wow, this has been a very enlightening and interesting conversation, but unfortunately we are out of time. We don't have a lot of time, but if you have any questions, please don't afraid to put them in the comment section. And definitely we're going to have a live Q&A where we will address all of these questions from the different sessions that we will have. And so just to let you know that the Banter Room is once every month. So thank you so much for joining us today. We will see you guys next month where we will talk a bit about the, Early, do you want to tell them what we're talking about?
Yeah, we're talking about social media and mental health and what that means for like really young people, especially since there's TikTok and there's like all these platforms that have kind of thrown really young people into like fame and spotlight so quickly. So what does that do to your mental health? And yeah, it's really interesting conversation.
That's a solid conversation.
Yeah,
very solid conversation. I'm very excited for that conversation. But just one more thing, we are excited to announce that we are starting a second service. Yes, 5 p.m. evening service starting on the first Sunday in July. So join us at the Life Point Church. Follow us on all our social media platforms at LifePointNG to get all the information that you need. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to our lovely guests.
There's no jollof rice on this table. You're cancelled.
Please forgive me.
It's the black table.
Forgive me. Yeah. Next time we'll have party jollof.
Yes, please.
Right here. But thank you so much.
It was a pleasure being on the show.
Same.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you,
And thank you all for watching, and we will see you next month.